Alright, so tonight we're going to be doing a very special lecture. I gave it a name, The Power of Saying Thank You. Even though I've given a lecture many years ago about the importance of gratefulness, gratitude, this is more focused on the concept of saying thank you. Something that all civilizations, all cultures, everybody's in agreement that it is important to communicate our thanks for a favor that was done for us. As you know, words have tremendous power. Whether they are negative words, unfortunately people tend to use those, insults, that can be very offensive and painful. But words can also be beautiful words, kind words, that convey tremendous feeling and sentiment. And that can make a world of a difference in how people feel. You can uplift their spirits with some kind words. One of those powerful words is thank you, as I will soon share with you the various ways that it is said in quite a few languages. It definitely has tremendous weight. People, unfortunately, however, do not appreciate enough what it means to say thank you for a favor that was done. They just take it for granted, or make believe it never happened. It's not so simple. A favor needs to be recognized one way or another. But people somehow either do not acknowledge it or forget, and they don't realize that this is a tremendous disservice to the person who did them this favor. But why is it so important? Why should the words thank you be so important? So I think one of the best answers to this is a quote from Cicero. You may recall, he was a famous Roman philosopher, and he says as follows: "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others." You know what that means? That not only is this a great virtue in itself, something so special, but it is the parent of all others. It is the root, the source of many other good qualities that people may possess. If they don't possess gratitude, then they really don't possess many, many good values. This is the parent of all virtues. So when you're saying thank you, you're not only expressing words of appreciation, you're actually demonstrating a very, very special quality that you may have, as long as you're sincere about it. The rabbis tell us that if one would only look around, if he paid attention to everything that goes on in his life from the moment that he was born, as much as he can remember, he would see so much kindness on his behalf from God. He would see so much kindness, if he paid attention, that it would be very, very difficult for him to ever consider a sin, going against God's wishes. Now obviously, I know that there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in God. Yeah. They still need to overcome that. Is there God or not? I'm talking about those that have some understanding that there is an almighty God who created this world and who brought them into this existence that we call life. So those that have that awareness may not be aware of all that kindness that He bestows upon us. It really takes some pondering, some reflection. We need to take the time to consider everything that happens in our life in order to really appreciate what goes on. So the rabbis tell us if we were to do so, this would add a tremendous amount of love, respect, admiration for all that happens in our life. And we would realize that the source of all blessing that we have, whether it's our livelihood, our children, everything is from Him. Not everybody takes the time to consider that. So as a result of that, the rabbis did us a favor. And they composed many blessings that we say on a daily basis. Some blessings we say once in a while on special occasions. We have, of course, Saturday, the Shabbat, we have the holidays, but we have blessings every day, morning, afternoon, and evening. Prayers, praising Hashem, thanking Him. Because we need these reminders. We need to be reminded to focus on all that He does for us. So that is the idea behind the blessings, that we remind ourselves that He's the source of all blessings. Imagine what the prophets had to do. The prophets from time to time would rebuke us for not taking notice of all the good that Hashem does for us. And you remember the famous prophecy, Yeshayahu, how could it be, Yadashor Korneo, B'chamor Evus Be'alav, Yisrael lo yada ami lo yiponan. How could it be that an ox knows who his master is? A donkey knows who feeds him. These animals recognize who provides for them, who takes care of them, and my nation, Israel, does not realize this. We're talking about during the era of the first temple, towards the end, right before the destruction. Imagine, God has to destroy His home. They did not understand on their own that what they were doing was very, very wrong. And therefore He had to compare them to an animal that somehow, instinctively recognizes who takes care of it. You don't have instinct. You have a mind, you have a soul. You have the ability to be very, very aware of what's going on. Besides your tradition, you have sechel. You have hopefully some common sense, but you don't think about it, or you choose to ignore it. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says also towards the end of his life. He predicts the future. And of course, taking into account what happened through the 40 years journey in the desert. Halashem tigmelu zot, very, very powerful words. Are you doing this to God? Am naval velo chacham, you must be so ungrateful and very unwise to behave this way, to act in such a rebellious way, always complaining, ungratefulness. So we see countless times that this ungratefulness surfaces and is a big problem. Because what did we just finish saying? That if someone were to be grateful, this is a tremendous virtue. This will help him in many areas of life. But especially in his relationship with God, he would not sin so easily. He would be ashamed. How could I do this to him? He has done so much for me. This concept of gratefulness is actually what Abraham Avinu used to convince people to believe in God. If you recall the story of how he began, Abraham, he recognized on his own as a child that there must be a creator, a captain to the ship. And he went on to teach people that these idols are worthless. There's a master of the universe who not only created the world, but he gave us life, and he did not just give us life and bail out. He's still around, he watches over us, he takes care of us, he knows our needs. Him, you should appreciate, to him you should worship, and not to anything else. So what did he bring out to convince them? Appreciate everything that you have in life. Look around and see what you have, what he has given you. Where did this all come from? By itself, from just a big bang? All the goodness in life? So that Abraham pointed to all the blessing that human beings receive as a way to teach them, look, who provides you with all this blessing? Where does this come from? And this is how he would convince them to come closer to God and realize the importance of serving only him and not idols, worthless idols. What did he teach besides the blessings? Besides noticing how Hashem is so kind to us, he also taught that human beings really are interdependent. If you look around, you will notice that God created a world where people need each other and do for each other. He's therefore the epitome of Hesed. Abraham is called the epitome of kindness. He not only preached it, but practiced it. And he says, look, this is the way God structured the world. He is that way. He is kind to you. And he wants us to be kind to each other. We need each other. There are carpenters and plumbers and engineers and lawyers and doctors. Not everybody is the same profession. Isn't it interesting that there's somewhat of a balance of professions? There's a baker and there's a cook. We need each other. Men need their wives, the wives need their husbands. Everything is about interdependency. And if everyone would cooperate, we would have harmony, we would have peace. It would be a beautiful world. If we knew the value that each human being contributes, every human being is special in some way. We just don't recognize it. We don't look to see how he or she is special. But if they're here for a reason. So Avraham Avinu is pointing this out. Look how the world is structured, how there's a need for everyone to participate. If that's the case, then learn to appreciate each other and to thank the other for a favor that was done to you. This is what Avraham Avinu is already teaching back then. Be kind. The opposite of selfishness, which is what idolatry led to. To be focused on themselves. What is there in there for me? Not what is there in there for someone else. So this is a very important concept that he's teaching. A concept that leads, hopefully, in the direction of appreciating what Hashem does for us. And being convinced of the importance of thanking Him continuously, otherwise we remain disconnected from Him. Prayer is about connecting. Thanking is part of the prayer. Don't be oblivious. Recognize Him. Recognize what He's done for you. And you will hopefully stay connected. And actually that's the verse, the meaning of the verse, Olam Chesed Yibaneh. The world is founded on kindness. The entire creation is an act of love and kindness from Hashem. He doesn't need this. You think God needs to create a world? What for? What benefit does He have from this? He doesn't need anything. It's all an act of love. That's what the Kabbalah teaches. God is all about goodness and love and kindness. That is the nature of God. And we can see it in the creation. What we see, the evil, that's not from God, that's man-made. Man has the ability of corrupting himself and being evil, going contrary to God's wishes. But Olam Chesed Yibaneh, the whole idea of creation, the way the world was created and the way the world continues to exist, can only be through Chesed. Once you remove kindness and everyone is just selfish, you have war. So we need to understand why people are so indifferent to being grateful. Why do they forget? After all, if a favor was done to you, hopefully you would remember it. Aren't people impressed if somebody does something good for them, helps them? Apparently no. Not everyone is impressed, and it's strange. You would wonder, why not? How can they just ignore it? How can they be so indifferent to it? And there's a great danger of being indifferent to the favors and kindness of human beings. The rabbis tell us a human being, an individual, who ignores or denies a favor that was done to him by another human being will eventually deny the favors that God does to him. Look, this is where it's headed. It begins with being kind, with acknowledging what others do for us, by saying thank you to them. This is where it begins. If we don't have that virtue, and if we ignore or deny that anything good was done for us, that leads to denying that He's doing anything for us. Oh, it's just an act of nature. He didn't do it. Or, I did it through my PhD, or through some intelligence or luck. People have different names or excuses for where they believe that their blessing comes from. It begins with that virtue that I mentioned earlier, called Hakarat HaTov, acknowledging the good in someone else, what someone else did for us. Because if we don't have that towards another human being, it could lead to the denial of the good that Hashem does for us. So let's now begin to analyze why people forget, ignore, or are not interested in recognizing something that's so obvious, something that was done for them. The way I present it is as follows. In Israel, there's a very, very popular job that many people want to have. It's called 804, 804. You know what that stands for? It means that you arrive at 8, you do 0, and you leave at 4. A lot of people like that job. They come at 8. At 8:15, they have a coffee break. At 9 o'clock, it's tea. At 11 o'clock, it's a cigarette. Later on, it's a phone call to a girlfriend or someone else. Then there's another coffee break. You see? They come at 8, they do 0, and they leave at 4. In this country, it's called bureaucracy. You don't get too much service from these kind of people. You wonder why now, right? They're not interested. How come? They just want to make money? They just want to sit there and do nothing? What's the mentality behind this type of a job? That some people are actually proud of it. Happy to do nothing. Remember, our forefathers, they left Egypt. They were for 40 years in the desert. Now, if you read the description of the Torah, the many, many times that they complained, despite the fact that they saw miracles, you wonder why. The answer is that they still had a slave mentality. What's a slave mentality? Akol magia li. It's coming to me. Coming to you? Since when? Yeah, it's coming to me. There's a certain mentality out there, it exists, that people actually think something is coming to them. They don't have to work for it. Magia li. To some extent, that's what socialism is all about. Let the government take care of the people's needs, even if they're unemployed. Let's not motivate them to get a job. We'll take care of everything. We'll pay for everything. Why? It's coming to them. Really? That's what people are beginning to believe these days, in this country too. Not just elsewhere. Something is coming to them. It's a slave mentality. It's a very, very bad attitude too. What do you mean coming to you? But that's exactly what happened in the desert. They complained, even though they saw miracles. God was good to them. He wanted to bring them to Israel. He gave them the Torah. They ignored all of that. All they were interested was, give me my food, give me water, take care of me. What about the observance of the Torah and mitzvot? That was not on their mind. This attitude of something that's coming to me is very, very dangerous. It's dangerous because a person who thinks that things are coming to him will never be happy. You realize that? He will always want more, he will always complain, he will always expect. I'm sure you know people like that. They expect. They're never happy. Do you think that somebody who's unhappy can make you happy? Now you see where I'm headed? These people who are working there wanting to do 0, they're not really that happy in themselves. If they're not happy with themselves, now forget about the job, they may be actually happy with the job. It pays their bills. They're not really happy with themselves. They don't have happiness in their life, in their nature. Someone who's unhappy cannot make others happy. He will not work too hard to make you happy, to satisfy you. I've come to an office where they close at 6, a government office. And I was there 5:30. And the lady behind the desk was already doing her nails, getting ready to go home. And I needed something. Come back tomorrow. But it's only 5:30. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day. Did they think perhaps that I have to travel half an hour back home, come back the next day, and take all this time? No, they don't think about that. She was doing her nails. And you sometimes wonder, why don't we get good service? Because these are the type of people behind the desk. They're not so happy. If they're not happy, they won't be excited to help you. What for? The Torah is concerned with this attitude too. When it comes to observance of Torah mitzvot, the Torah says Hashem is very upset. Hashem says, I will be very upset at you for not serving me, for not observing the mitzvot, the commandments, with happiness. Just like something is routine, something that is not that important, just to get by, the bare minimum. Obviously that doesn't mean that you're excited, that you believe in it, that you care about it. Yes, eventually it is true that there's something called burnout. People get used to things And there's a little bit of burnout, meaning less excitement, but that's only because they don't realize the value of what they're doing. If they realize that what they're doing has tremendous value, they're going to be rewarded for this in the afterlife, they will continue to be happy. But it's not just about the reward. On a higher level, one who realizes the importance of the mitzvah, what this does in this world and in the upper worlds, he's obviously more focused on what he's doing and has a much better attitude, more positive. So people don't have the proper understanding of what service is, whether it's service to other human beings, what it means to help another human being, or what it means to serve Hashem. They lack that basic understanding. And if they're unhappy with themselves, what does unhappiness mean? It means that person is incomplete. One who does not have the midah of happiness in him, he's incomplete. Lo shalem, as we say in Hebrew. He's incomplete. And such an incomplete person cannot really accomplish too much in life. He will always be sad, disappointed. He cannot find himself. Even though he appears to be calm, he really is not. Inside, he's definitely not calm. There's something that's bothering him, and he may not know what that is that's bothering him. Something is missing in their life. Part of what is missing is always going to be clarity of tachlit, of purpose. What is life all about? What's the meaning of life? If one does not have a little bit of clarity, then what is this all for? Why do I have to suffer? Why is life so hard on me? Well, if you knew where you're headed and what you need to accomplish, you would not complain as much. You wouldn't feel so bad. So there's definitely some lack of clarity, which comes from ignorance, by the way. The more we learn, the more we know. And hopefully, the more we train ourselves to be thankful and grateful for everything, then we won't be so sad either. Because everyone can count his blessings. There's always something good that you can point to. So why be miserable? So now, we're going to go one step deeper into understanding ungratefulness. So far, what do we see? That a person who's unhappy is incomplete. He cannot make himself happy, so he can definitely not make others happy. So therefore, if you did him a favor, you think that would make him happy? Not necessarily, either. He would not recognize it as such, because he may have that attitude of it's coming to him. And that is where, if you look at the Hebrew word for kfiyut tova, ungratefulness, you will see the deeper meaning of why people are ungrateful. What does it mean to be kafui tova in Hebrew? One way of understanding kafui means to cover up. Lichpot means to cover. And to cover means to minimize or to ignore. Minimize meaning, this was not a real big favor. He has money anyway, it's nothing for him. $1,000? It's like for you to spend $1. People have incredible creative ways of how they minimize a favor that was done to them. You think this is a favor? To him it's nothing. You think he really meant it? All kinds of excuses, lichpot, lechasot, to minimize, to cover up, or even worse, to completely ignore. Nothing really happened. It's coming to him. Remember, that's the mentality of it's coming to me. So even though he does recognize, he or she recognizes that something good was done, they will minimize it. That's the root of the problem. Another understanding in the word kfiyut tova is lichpot also means to obligate, to force. Kfiyah. And that's what coming to me means. You think he did this because he was doing me a favor? It's a magiali. It's coming to me. He needs to do that. He has the money to do so. He has to take care of his relatives. He must do it. He better do it. Right? That's the way people talk. What do you mean he better do it? He doesn't owe you anything. Oh, sure, he owes it to me for whatever reason. This is the root. In the Hebrew, therefore, you actually are able to see the root of the problem here. And that's the mentality that unfortunately many people have. In all cultures, if you look around and analyze the importance of appreciation, gratefulness, saying thank you, you will notice that it does appear in all cultures, in all languages. And I did a little bit of a study, since I'm interested in languages, I did a little bit of a study of the root of the word thank you in many languages. Where does the word come from? Now, most people would not even know where the English word thank you comes from. As you know, English is somewhat of a Germanic language, Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, and a lot of common cognates, a lot of common words that they share. So thank or dank, danke as they say in German, is, as they explain, from the word, or from the Latin, or from an older word, tank, which has something to do with thought. To think, which ultimately is to remember what was done. So somehow the word thank you originates from the thought or from remembering an act that was done, and of course to be appreciative of that. That's where English and German would take their origin of the word thank you. Then you have, let's take Persian first. Now, if you ask somebody from Iran, how do you say thank you? The first word that will come to his mind is merci. But merci is not Persian, it's French. If you ask someone from Iran, think of another word, he will tell you, mutashakkiram. Well, that's not Persian either, that's from Arabic, mutashakkir. Or in Arabic, shukran, the more colloquial way of saying it, thank you. That has nothing to do with Persian, it's Arabic. And by the way, it means more praise, like shukrallah. So what's the real Persian word for saying thank you? Is there? Or they don't believe in saying thank you? The real older Persian word is sepas gozaram. You have to really know good Persian for that. Do you know what sepas means? Sepas is gratitude. It's also in Urdu, and it actually originates, they say, perhaps from Kurdish, because these languages have common words, and sepas is a real old word, a very old word, that conveys gratitude. And gozan is, when you put them together, I guess means to give it over, maybe. So again, we see the concept of gratitude appearing in the Persian language. How about Spanish and Italian? Spanish we say gracias. In Italian, grazie. Similar also from the Latin. These are all Latin languages, and basically the idea behind it is to recognize a favor that was done, like the English word grace, and as you can see it in the Spanish gracias, the word is very similar. But I prefer Portuguese. I think the Portuguese way of saying thank you says a lot more than just gracias or appreciation. In Portuguese we say obrigado for a man, obrigada to a woman. And what does that mean? It means I'm indebted to you, from the word obligation in Latin. Indebted, ani chayav lecha. It's a much deeper meaning of what just happened, what just transpired, that some favor was done. I feel indebted to you. I want to repay it. That's what indebted means. I want to repay it one day. It's not that I just appreciate the nice act. I'm indebted to you. Now I'll owe you one. How about French? French, they use the word merci, which, if you go back in time, has something to do also with the Latin word of either a gift or grace, something similar to what we said in the other languages, but just another root from Latin. To better understand, however, the importance of saying thank you, we need to turn to Hebrew. Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue. And here you will find something very interesting. The same word that's used for saying thank you in Hebrew today, todah, is also, the root of it is the one that's used to acknowledge, to admit. Ani modeh bechach. I admit to this, I acknowledge this, I recognize this. So what you have here is a combination of two ideas, not only showing appreciation, hodaya, thankfulness, but also recognizing, acknowledging, yes, this was a real favor, an act of kindness on your part. Well, that's very, very significant. Who was the first one in the Torah to thank Hashem? The rabbis tell us Leah. Remember Leah, the wife of Yaakov, one of the wives? When did she thank Hashem? When she had her fourth child, Yehuda. Yehuda comes from Hodaya. Apamoded, now I will thank Hashem. Now, what about before? You should have thanked him the first time around, the first baby. Why now? Rabbi says she was the first one, which in itself is a question. What do you mean she was the first one ever? What about our forefathers? They for sure were thanking Hashem. So the commentators give different explanations. Our forefathers praised Hashem for everything. They were obviously aware of everything Hashem does. She was the first one to thank. What does it mean to thank? That she took notice of something. There are 4 wives. Yaakov now has 4. He has kids with all 4 of them. So they had this sort of a tradition that each one of the 4 is going to have 3 kids. Altogether 12. 12 tribes. As soon as she had the 4th, she felt perhaps she got more than what she deserves. So she says, I thank you, Hashem. This is a tremendous act of kindness on your part to give me another child. So she not only thanks and shows her appreciation, she recognizes that this is something special. So you have the 2 words there, to recognize, to admit. And that's where the Jewish people take their name from, Yehudim, from this child Yehuda, to thank Hashem. Perhaps that should serve as a lesson, by the way, that we need to strengthen our awareness of what Hashem does for us and thank Him for everything, since we have that name. Appreciation is something that many people just take for granted because the people who were kind to them may not be in touch with them so often. Once in a while they see them, they help them. But the rabbis tell us, how about your parents? They do so much for you. There's a special mitzvah in the Torah, therefore, kabed avicha betimecha, honor your parents. And you know why that is so important? To honor your parents, not only because they do so much for you, but the rabbis explain that this mitzvah is a keresh kfitza, is a springboard towards the mitzvah of loving Hashem. If you notice how much your parents do for you, that they fed you, they clothed you, they took care of you for so many years, you will come to realize, hopefully, how much He takes care of you, how much He does for you, how much He provides for you. So one leads to another. Be careful, therefore, with this commandment. Honor your parents, and this will be, hopefully, a springboard that will show you the way of how to love Hashem, how to thank and appreciate Hashem. Okay, now that we understand the importance of this virtue called appreciation and gratefulness, how do we develop it? One rabbi said it very beautifully. He says as follows: the root of thankfulness comes from a completely different dimension, a spiritual dimension that is called koach hanetina, the power of giving. Ungratefulness comes from the koach, if we can call it that, from the power of wanting to receive. So the individual who is practicing ungratefulness, if that's all he knows, basically what he demonstrates is that his koach, his power, is to receive, not to give. To be a mekabel. He wants to receive, to be on the receiving end. Ultimately, the Torah trains us to be a giver, not a taker. We have many, many mitzvot, and that's what their purpose is to train us to be a giver and not a taker. But to become a giver, giving, the act of giving is very spiritual. The act of wanting to receive is more physical because the body wants to receive. The body wants to enjoy. So to give, to be unselfish, altruistic, that's something so pure. That comes from the soul, from the neshama. That is spiritual in nature. That we need to train ourselves. So in order to develop this recognition of a favor, an act of kindness that was done to us, we need to start from scratch, to be givers. If we give, we will understand what it means that others give us. You understand that? Otherwise, it will not happen so easily. We may give because we are forced to give, because we are told to give. No, we don't want to do that way. We want to give because we understand the importance of giving. We want to do it on our own. We're excited to give. We're happy to give. So there's a large distance, as we say in Spanish, de dicho a hecho hay mucho trecho. From saying to doing, there's a long road. A lot of people say things, but they don't do them. To actually do it, you need to believe in it. For it to come naturally, you need to understand the meaning of it. Koach hanetina, therefore, the ability or the power to give helps a lot in hopefully developing the virtue of appreciating what somebody else does for us. I'd just like to add also that many studies were done on the importance of saying thank you. You've seen them, thank you cards. We use them occasionally. They're very meaningful. A lot of people said that they were extremely happy. It made such a difference to them when they received that thank you card. You may have underestimated even what this will do. You thought, okay, just thank you, not even realizing the reaction on the other end. A lot of studies were done. What saying thank you, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's at home, what it does to the receiving end, to the recipient, and what it actually does to the person saying those words too. This can change the entire atmosphere at work and at home when people are thankful and recognize and acknowledge a favor that was done or something that was done that stands out. And in marriage, this can make a world of a difference. It is a fact that if a woman or husband feels appreciated, what they do is valued or held in high esteem, makes a big difference in how they feel towards their entire relationship, how committed they will be towards this relationship. If they don't feel appreciated by their spouse, this is no good. Very, very unhealthy. Very, very unhealthy. And this unfortunately happens in many relationships. When the relationship is suffering because of a lack of this, not enough of it. Some spouses are more hungry than others for a nice word, for a kind remark. How was the food? Well, depends. If the husband expects good food, then he may not say anything. He expects it. I married you. Yeah, you're going to be my cook. Yeah, you have those kind of people. It could also be that the woman, I have to be fair, that the woman does not appreciate all the hard work that the husband puts in. Whether it's at work or at home, the repairs he does. She doesn't take notice of those things because those things don't occupy her mind. Repairs. As long as everything is working, she doesn't want to know about the repairs. But you do have to take notice. Otherwise you won't appreciate how much he or she does for you. So there's no doubt that saying thank you and appreciating does a lot to the welfare of people on the receiving end, to those who may have done the act, who may have been kind to you, if they receive some words of appreciation. There's no doubt about it. It affects everyone in a very positive way. We see the importance of being kind and appreciative in other ways as well. The rabbis tell us that if you give a poor man charity, tzedakah, you will be blessed with 6 blessings. But if you say a kind word to him, you motivate him, you uplift his spirits, you will receive an additional 11 blessings, altogether 17. You're getting more for the kind words, for the conciliatory words, for words of appeasement, more than the money that you gave him. Apparently, look what these words are doing. Otherwise, you would think, I gave him money, a lot of money. you should know that sometimes those words will have a greater impact than the money that you've given him. You made him feel good. You made him feel like an equal. Not that he's a beggar. You didn't look down on him, God forbid. You motivated him. You gave him perhaps some names where he can get more money. Perhaps you gave him something to drink and eat. There's a lot of ways that one can receive more blessings for what he's doing than just giving money. And that is by motivating, by uplifting someone's spirit who may be down and heartbroken. Another way that we see this, the importance of appreciation, is that if somebody taught you even one halakha, one mitzvah, anything in Judaism, you have to call him teacher. You have to show your appreciation. All he taught you was one idea. He didn't teach you too much, just one. You still have to appreciate it. You have to recognize that. Call him your teacher. When you quote someone, you're doing that person a favor too. You're quoting him and not taking the credit for yourself by saying something that really was said by someone else. Something that has great value, that you want to quote. Give credit where credit is due. Why? Appreciate. Be grateful. So we see many examples of things that we can do that basically convey this idea of how important it is to appreciate that which was done for us. Okay, now we've come to a very important point in this topic. And that is a subject that very few people are aware of. How thank you can be very powerful in a way that no one ever dreamt, in a mystical way. Saying thank you to Hashem is a powerful segula. Segula, I guess the best translation in English would be a metaphysical power or remedy of sorts. It can bring us tremendous blessing from above. There's certain things that if we do them, certain mitzvot that have a segula, certain powers to them. So being appreciative and saying thank you to Hashem on a regular basis, this in itself is very meritorious. It has tremendous power. And I'm going to share with you one story. There are many, many stories of how this is so true. This happened not too long ago in Israel. There was a very wealthy individual, a businessman who was doing very, very well. In business, that is. In human relationships, he was very mean. Not such a good person. And he was interested in buying the entire 17th floor of a skyscraper in Tel Aviv called Azrieli. And he went to see it. But in the way to see that particular investment, there was a con artist who convinced him instead to use his money to buy some land in Romania, where this land would be a very good investment. Eventually he can sell it and make a lot of money because it was going to be developed. So it made some sense to invest over there. It was very promising. The return would be a lot more than with this floor on this skyscraper. It turns out, however, that he was conned because that land that he bought was zoned for agriculture. So he lost a lot of money. Now what? He had no choice. He was getting into a lot of trouble with income tax and with other debtors. He had to get a loan from the black market. Where do you think they offered those kinds of loans? In the same building where he was going to buy, in the same floor. He went back to that same floor that originally he was going to buy, to an office that would give him a loan for very high interest. But he had no choice. And he took this money and he decided, well, I'm already here, let me go see the other floors, let me see the building. And he went up till the roof. Once he was on the roof, he got locked out. Or I should say locked in. He couldn't get out. He knocked on the door, nobody heard him. He's stuck all the way on the roof of this tall building, calling out, yelling, nobody hears him. And he's desperate, he doesn't know what to do. He calls out to people who are down below in the street, nobody can hear him, he's very, very high. No matter what he did not succeed in calling anybody's attention. Now what do we do? So he decides, you know what? I have an idea of what's going to get people's attention. I'm going to throw some of this money. He just got some money, right? A whole bunch of cash. I'm going to throw it down. People are going to see money coming down. They're definitely going to look up. And they're going to get me the help I need. So he threw down bundles of money. People ran to recover all this cash, free cash coming down from heaven. But they didn't look up. They were just busy collecting the money. He threw more. He threw all the money that he just took as a loan. And people just scrambled to get the money and didn't look up. Now he felt very, very bad. Not only did he lose his investment, he lost his money, and he's still stuck. Now what are we going to do? At that moment, he cried out to Hashem. At that moment, he finally did something he never did before. He cried out to Hashem, please help me. I know I wasn't such a good guy, but please help me. And as soon as he turned to Hashem and prayed, he thought of a great idea. He looked around the roof and he saw some gravel. From new construction, leftover gravel. I think this is going to get the people's attention. He started throwing gravel down the street on people's heads. And now they did look up. Who's this crazy guy? And they called the police. And the police, of course, went up, opened the door, and investigated what's going on. And we told him this long story of how he lost money, and he went to get a loan, and he got stuck. And this was the only way to get the people's attention. So, of course, they let him go. He went home, and he thought a lot about what happened that day. He says, you know what? I just learned a very important lesson. When people had all this money come down at them, they didn't look up. When did they start looking up? When stones came down. Unfortunately, he says, we don't look up and thank God when He blesses us, when He sends us down so much blessing. We only start looking up when things are tough, when we get rocks on top of our head. Is that the only time we look up? We should be looking up, especially when things are good, and thanking Hashem. I promise to you, God, that from now on I will say thank you all the time. Thank you for everything. Thank you every single day. And he continued to say thank you and thank you and thank you for several days. For everything, even for those things that were not so good. Thank you for losing that money. Thank you for getting me stuck up there. Thank you for all of that. And after a few days, he gets a phone call from Romania. The government just rezoned it to construction. And he was able to recover all his money and, of course, made a big profit. Many, many such stories where saying thank you for everything was a lifesaver for many people. After they got into this routine of thanking Hashem for everything, they saw miracles. I saw a beautiful saying, I don't know from who, that says as follows: thank you, God, for everything in my life, the good and the bad. Some were blessings and some were lessons. Yeah, even those things that are a little bit difficult for us, but they're still valuable lessons. Everything is good. We don't realize it, we don't appreciate it. At this point, I want to say a few words in tribute to my mother, Aleh Shalom, of blessed memory, who recently passed away. If there's anyone that we have to show our appreciation and be grateful to, is our parents. And sometimes we fail to do that enough during our life, during their life. The Zohar says that the mitzvah of kibbut avayim, honoring one's parents, even applies after their death. And that's strange. What could you do for them after they've left this world? And the answer is simple. There's a lot of things that you can do in their memory. And they benefit from that. Whether it's giving charity in their name, whether it's the Kaddish that Jewish people say for a while, whether it's the learning of Torah, Mishnayot for them. All of this, our tradition says, makes a difference. They can no longer do anything for themselves in the upper world. It is the children that are left behind that can still, as emissaries of those parents, do something for them, for their soul. There's something else, however, I think is very, very special that we can do. In Portuguese we say, longe dos olhos, mas perto do coração. What that means is that sometimes people may be far from us, far from the eye, but very, very close to our hearts. And And that does not only mean people who are distant from us in this life, but people who are no longer around. We can no longer see them, but they are etched in our heart. Their memories are etched in our heart. But what are those memories good for? What can you do with memories, with feelings? David HaMelech says something very, very powerful in recognizing all the miracles that Hashem has done for him. He says, Kos Yeshuot Esa Uv'Shem Hashem Yikra. I will raise a cup of salvations and I will call out in the name of God. What that means is that I will share with people all the miracles that I've experienced. I'm not only going to say thank you to Hashem. You know how I'm going to appreciate everything that He does for me? I'm going to teach others to appreciate Him too. I will therefore fill this cup with the Yeshuot, with all the miracles that I witnessed, and I will talk about it. It's a very important idea to share with people any miraculous experience that you may have had, any blessing that you may have witnessed, something that you've noticed. Share it with others, not only to motivate them, not only for them to recognize that this is for God. This will make you feel better. Look, by talking about it, you're getting yourself into the habit of appreciating and remembering what has happened, because we tend to forget. So this is what David HaMelech is teaching us. You experience something, share it with others, let them also give thanks to Hashem. So, what can we share about a mother? A mother has an unconditional love for a child. Unconditional love is something very powerful. We perhaps need to show an unconditional appreciation to our parents as well. How do we do that? You know how to do that? I thought of a great idea. Let Mother's Day be every day of the year, not just once a year. People ask me about Thanksgiving. Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? I say, of course, every day. Not with a turkey, by the way. But every day we give thanks to Hashem with our blessings, with Birkat HaMazon. We show our appreciation every day, not just once in a while. So to a parent, what we need to do is just to show greater appreciation for what they do during their life and even in the afterlife, after they've left, by sharing with others our memories, by reminding them how important it is to be respectful of them, how much they do for us in an unconditional way. This is a beautiful thing, not only important, but a beautiful thing. As we started off saying, this is a virtue. To be appreciative and to say thank you is a virtue. It's the parent of all virtues. So why not begin with one's parents? And of course, that will lead us to appreciate God as well. As we approach Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, I think this is a very good time to realize that Hashem has done with us a tremendous act of kindness by enabling us to acquire atonement. He forgives us, and He allows us to start a new chapter in our life, beginning with the New Year. This is a tremendous act of Hesed, to forgive and forget. And that should be a lesson for us to also forgive and forget others. This is, I think, a very valuable lesson as we enter the new year, to show our appreciation to Kadosh Baruch Hu for everything that He has done for us, especially that He forgives us. And I think that by showing our appreciation to Hashem, hopefully that will teach us or remind us that we need to appreciate what others do for us. But that's not enough. We need to remind people regularly. Be thankful of everything that you have. Don't look at what you don't have. Focus on what you have. Count your blessings, and you will see that there's a lot of reason to be thankful. Amen.